wondering how I went into debt buying full-frame camera equipment when I'm not a paid professional photographer, and a point and shoot might have served me just as well. I take full responsibility for my actions, but I may have been influenced by some of the camera channels on YouTube.
Jump right up to the full frame. I think that's the goal.
So if you're considering an upgrade to a full frame camera, you just might get that background blur that you want.
When I first plunged into the world of mirrorless cameras, it was to get a blurry background for my YouTube channel. Think Media showed that if you paired the Sony a6400 with the Sigma 16mm lens, you could open the aperture to f1.4 and achieve that professional look. I wasn't really sure what an aperture was at the time, but I knew I wanted that look. The only problem was the Sony a6400 was a little bit too expensive, so I ended up getting the Lumix G95 because I figured it would be just as good. After I made a few videos, I decided I would like to quit my job as a medical biller and become a professional videographer, or better yet, a photographer. On YouTube, I saw a lady photographing a model in the woods at golden hour, and it looked so glamorous. I knew that was a job for me. The fact that I'm shy and introverted and have absolutely no experience setting up a business were just minor details. The most important thing was to try to get the kind of camera that these professionals were using. When I first tried to practice portrait photography with my Lumix G95, I realized there was a lack of willing subjects in my small circle of friends and family, so I decided to go out and take photographs of the squirrels. But I noticed I wasn't getting that same blurred out background like the professionals on YouTube were getting, so I decided it just might be time to bite the bullet and invest in an APS-C camera. I was really inspired by Jason Vong, and I figured an investment of about $1,500 wasn't too much to be able to one day leave the medical billing industry behind.
I recommend cameras with at least an APS-C sensor. At this point here, we're definitely going to get better image quality over our phones, better low light performance, and that signature pro look, that beautiful background blur, aka authentic portrait mode.
I was able to buy a used Sony a6400 on eBay for less than $1,000, and I noticed that the quality of my squirrel photos was improving with a more blurry background. But I didn't feel like I was getting any closer to achieving my goal of becoming a professional photographer. But then Sony decided to release the Sony a6700, and after watching this review from Jared Polin, I realized I might just have the wrong sensor size if I wanted to become a professional.
This is priced very well, but I'm personally not a person who wants to go into a crop sensor camera. 20 years ago when I started, that's all we had. But if all you can afford and you want to be in the Sony universe is a crop sensor camera, and that lets you get better glass, then I'm all for you going with something like this. But if you are looking for this Sony camera, it did a nice job. It did nice stills, it does nice video, and you have to decide which direction you want to go. And truly, I thought that maybe the APS-C system was entirely dead from Sony, and now it's clearly not. But you also have to take into consideration something that's priced very similar, like Canon's R8, which is also full frame. Will Sony be coming out with a $1,500 full frame camera at some point, which basically renders something like this useless? I don't know, but I think full frame does give you great results. But then again, nobody really knows the difference. A good picture is a good picture is a good picture.
Surely I couldn't justify purchasing a full-frame camera on a medical biller's budget. Then I watched this review from Stefano Lombardo, and he explained that for only a few $100s more than the Sony a6700, you could get the Sony a7 IV. I really wanted to leave the world of medical billing behind. I was open to anything.
So these are essentially the features that make the Sony a6700 impressive and different from the rest. But for an extra $500, you can get a used Sony a7 IV, which is going to be a better camera with more impressive specs for your money than the Sony a6700. Now, sure, one of the biggest issues with the Sony a7 IV is that it has a crop when shooting in 4K 60, but kind of the only feature that people really hate about the a7 IV. Everything else on the a7 IV is amazing. It shoots at 33 megapixels, where the a6700 shoots at 26 megapixels. It's a full frame camera, not an APS-C or crop sensor camera, so you have better low light performance, more depth of field, no crop factor, and you can use full frame lenses. You don't have to worry about doing math when you're buying lenses. If your lens says 35 millimeters, you're getting a 35 millimeter lens or focal length. You're not going to have any crop when shooting in video modes unless you're shooting in that 4K 60.
I really hate math. That's one of the reasons I hated being a medical biller. So I decided to do some more research to see if full frame is really so much better than APS-C. I turned to one of my favorite channels, Tony and Chelsea, to see if that's what real professionals use.
If you get an inexpensive 50mm f1.8 like the ones that we have, it will blur the background much, much more. Also, cameras with bigger sensors tend to blur the background more with the same f-stop number. So if you're considering an upgrade to a full-frame camera, you just might get that background blur that you want.
And if you are willing to invest in a full-frame camera and the lenses, which is very important, and you want a shallower depth of field, better bokeh, better low-light capability, full frame might be for you.
Another area big sensors win is optimal image quality. This is ISO 100 of a blue sky, and you can see the APS-C sensor shows significantly more noise than the full frame sensor does. Now, you'll hear many reviewers say there is no noise at the base ISO, but that is simply not true. There is always noise, especially in primary colors such as red, blue, and green. This would be easy to remove, but still, it's nice to have a clean image straight out of the camera. This monstrous lens is a 105mm f1.4, and it's huge. And it's designed for full-frame cameras like this Nikon D850. And the effects of it are amazing. It produces fantastic amounts of background blur. As a portrait lens, it creates a look that's kind of unbeatable. I would love it if I could get this exact same look for APS-C cameras or Micro Four Thirds cameras. But here's the thing, the numbers don't really work out. Do the crop factor math and you figure out that for an APS-C camera, you would need a 70mm f0.9 lens. And for a Micro Four Thirds camera, you would need a 53mm f0.7 lens. And those lenses don't exist. You can't go buy those lenses. And that's where crop factor starts to break down. You want a particular effect, but some lenses are simply unique. Photographers ask me if they should go full frame, and usually my answer is no. You don't usually need to go full frame until you get to the point where you're lusting over a lens like this, something that you cannot get the equivalent for these smaller sensor cameras.
I realized that making such a large purchase like this required more research than usual. I decided to watch some of Camera Conspiracies videos because Casey from Camera Conspiracies is the one that inspired me to invest in the Panasonic Micro Four Thirds system. If he found such a large benefit in full frame, that would be just the push I needed to make my purchase.
Jump right up to the full frame. I think that's the goal, unless you get tired of carrying it and you really don't want that life. Like, that's the best footage. And I bet Canon and Nikon also, possibly better than Sony even. The cost and the weight versus the results, that's up to you to decide what's worth what. So is full frame worth the weight and the cost? It's like, it depends. It depends what you're going for. Do you want to be inspired by your footage when you get home and see like, wow, I can't believe that I made a movie of some sort? Or do you want to have like camcorder footage that's beaten by most bridge cams? Everything's kind of like in focus, over sharpened, kind of highlights blown, low dynamic range look. And then you look at the Sony footage and it's like, oh, magical. Oh, there's the magic. You're separating the bird from the background. The colors are just popping. Something's better about it. You just know, you can see it. You can see the cost and the weight, the value.
What really convinced me that I needed to go with full frame was watching the Film Alliance channel. He explained that full frame is for professionals and APS-C is for hobbyists. I want to be a professional, not a hobbyist. Even though I haven't taken any classes in photography, videography, or business, I just knew that if I got the right camera, everything would magically fall into place.
But really the question should be, what sensor is better for you and your needs? Ask yourself, what are you shooting? Are you a hobbyist who likes to take photos on the weekend and would like a few different lenses to choose from? Then APS-C may be your preferred camera? Are you an aspiring video creator or photographer and want to create a living making videos and shooting photos? Then maybe the full frame is the way to go. The last thing that you want to happen if you get home from, say, your first wedding shoot and you see that there's a bunch of noise in the image because you were shooting low light and you had an APS-C camera and the lens that you were using didn't have a wide enough aperture. And then there's very few options that you can do at that point in time to get rid of the noise. Whereas if you're using a full frame in a low light situation, you would have way better results.
After opening a Paybu credit card with B&H Photo, I was able to get my hands on the Sony a7 IV. It didn't immediately make me feel like a professional photographer. I have to admit I was a little nervous to take it out in public for fear of getting robbed. But I did notice a major improvement in my squirrel photos. I finally was able to get that blurred out background that I had been dreaming of. But I wasn't any closer to becoming a professional photographer. I still had my introverted tendencies. This whole experience is starting to make me wonder if it's not the gear that's going to make me a professional photographer. I might actually need to invest some time learning the art of photography, as well as how to open up a business. I was watching this show on YouTube called This Week in Photography, and the guest was Joe Edelman. And he really explained the whole process that I went through so perfectly.
I do see a lot of, YouTubers, a lot of photo educators, a lot of even, the blogs at the same time. They get more views. They get talked about more. Obviously more views or more reads on a blog, that means more advertising dollars, et cetera. But what it's not doing is it's not teaching people how to take better pictures. And as a result, we're kind of creating this cultural phenomenon where, especially for people coming into, this world of photography, you're not going to take a better picture by learning photography. You're going to take a better picture by getting a better camera. That's what's becoming.
That's where it is. Or getting a bigger sensor, right? What you talked about, I call, like that investment that you make, whether it's money and convincing the spouse and the time learning how to use this gear and all this stuff. I call that digital Stockholm syndrome.
And I've honestly learned so much from what Tom Carlton had to say about good photography.
Because people don't tend to buy full frame cameras because they need it. A lot of the time they buy it because they just want it, because it looks good, because it feels pro, because somewhere deep down they think owning a full frame camera will make them a better photographer. Spoiler alert, it won't. Photography is all about vision and storytelling. It's about light, composition, timing, and emotion, not the sensor size.
If you like this video, give it a like. Consider subscribing for more camera-related content from a newbie like me. God bless.